So you want to hear about the time I messed up? No, not messed up. More like proved a point to a bunch of stubborn guys who thought they knew everything. Because, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. My name's Riley. I'm 28, and I've seen some things out there. More than most of these desk jockeys ever will. They always underestimate me. You know, just because I'm a woman, they think I'm not as tough, not as sharp. It's total garbage. So, yeah, this one time, it was during my last deployment in Iraq. We were at a forward operating base, Phobie Phoenix. Actually, and things were pretty tense. Always are, right? But this was different. This was my moment to show them. So, picture this. It's late. Like, hinge. And I'm on thermal watch, staring at a screen that makes everything look like a blurry heat signature. My eyes are burning. And honestly, I'd rather be back in the barracks, listening to my true crime podcasts. But no, I'm stuck here, watching static, while the guys in charge are probably snoring their heads off. There was this convoy, right? A civilian convoy, supposedly full of contractors, locals, whatever. But sometimes those civilian convoys aren't so innocent. If you catch my drift, we'd had intel, vague whispers, about some bad actors trying to move stuff, maybe even people disguised as aid. But the LT, bless his naive heart, was all about playing it safe. Rules of engagement. Blah, blah, blah. He was Mr. Growth Mindset, always with his little talks about de-escalation and setting boundaries. Like, dude, we're in a war zone, not a therapy session. This new guy, Miller, he was on watch with me, total checked out type, just staring into space, probably thinking about his girlfriend back home. He never really got it. He'd just grunt whenever I tried to talk to him. I swear, sometimes I felt like I was the only one paying attention. The radio was mostly quiet, just the usual chatter. Then I saw it. A flicker. Nothing major. Just a little something on the thermal. My gut told me something was off. You get that feeling out here. You know, that little twitch in your stomach that says, pay attention. I zoomed in, tried to get a clearer picture. It was still vague. Could have been anything. A dog. A tumbleweed. But it felt wrong. I called it in. Movement on thermal. Sector 7. Approaching the civilian convoy. The voice on the other end, some sergeant, probably barely awake, just grumbled. Negative. Riley, looks clear on our end. Just the convoy? That really got under my skin. Clear on your end. I'm looking right at it. There's something there. He sighed. A loud, exasperated sound that made me want to throw my headset across the room. Look. Specialist, if it's not a confirmed threat, we're not engaging a civilian convoy. You know, the ROE. Oh, I knew the ROE, and I knew how those rules always got twisted to make us look bad. To make me look bad? They never trusted my judgment. Never. It was always, did you double check? Riley, are you sure? Riley, like I was some rookie who just got off the bus. Between us, I wanted to scream. I'd been in firefights, seen things that would make these guys wet their pants, and they were questioning my ability to read a damn thermal screen. It was infuriating. My mind started racing. If I just said maybe, they'd dismiss it. They'd always dismiss me. This was my chance to show them. To show them I wasn't just some girl they could ignore. I needed to be certain. So, I said it. No, Sergeant, I'm positive. I see definite movement. Looks like multiple individuals. Armed, moving to intercept Miller, next to me, suddenly perked up. He gave me this weird look, like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. He probably thought I was crazy, but what did he know? He was just a pawn in their game anyway. The sergeant hesitated. Armed. You're certain they're armed? This was it. The moment of truth. I pushed the button on the comms again. Yes, Sergeant, absolutely certain. They're positioning themselves. This looks like an ambush. There was a pause, a really long one, and I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, weighing the risk of ignoring me versus the risk of a potential ambush. I knew they'd gotten burned before by not acting on intel. It was always a power struggle, a silent war of wills. He finally said, "All right, copy that. QRF is inbound. Stand by for further instructions. Do not engage." Like I would just sit there and watch. Please. The next few minutes were a blur. The QRF, our quick reaction force, was a bunch of guys from Bravo Company. They were always a bit gung-ho, especially that LT Davis. He was an old school provider type, always trying to be the hero. Very traditional in his thinking. He probably thought I was just some whiny female, not worth his time. I heard them scramble over the radio, barking orders. I saw their thermal signatures heading out. They were moving fast, My heart was pounding, a weird mix of panic and triumph. I had done it. I had forced their hand. They had to listen to me now. Then came the sounds. The pop, pop, pop of small arms fire. And then louder. Heavier. The distinct thud of a 50 cal. I flinched, even though I was miles away. The comms lit up with frantic shouts. Contact? Contact. Heavy fire from the south. Miller jumped, finally looking fully awake. His eyes wide. What the hell? Riley, what did you see? I just stared at the screen, my mouth suddenly dry. The heat signatures of our guys were spread out, engaging. And those other, smaller signatures, the ones from the convoy, they were scattered, some still, some trying to move. I swallowed. I saw movement. I told them. I kept my voice steady, even though inside, a tiny voice was whispering, "What if you were wrong?" But I quickly squashed it. I couldn't be wrong. I was never wrong. They just didn't trust me enough. More shouts. More gunfire. We have multiple casualties. Civilians involved. I repeat. Civilians involved. My stomach dropped. Kids. They had said there were kids in that convoy. My mind immediately flashed back to a time when my own family brushed me off, dismissed my concerns. It was the same feeling. That burning injustice. They made me doubt myself. So I had to go bigger. Bolder. This wasn't my fault. This was their fault for not listening in the first place. If they'd just trusted me, I wouldn't have had to exaggerate. It was weaponized vulnerability on their part, making me feel like I had to prove everything. The next hour was chaos. Dust-offs were called in. I could hear the chopper's blades thumping, even through the base walls. The medics were screaming for blood. It was a disaster. All because they didn't listen. When L.T. Davis came back, his face was grim, covered in dust and sweat. He stormed into the op center, practically spitting fire. What the hell? Specialist? You said armed individuals? We rolled up on a goddamn school bus full of kids and a few guys with ancient rifles guarding a food shipment. My jaw tightened. I saw movement, Lieutenant. Significant movement. And they looked like they were positioning for an attack. He slammed his hand on the console. They were escorting a humanitarian convoy? They were trying to get away from us. You initiated a firefight with a civilian aid group because you saw movement. His eyes were blazing. We have kids wounded. 2 adults are KIA. I felt a prickle of tears, but I blinked them away. No, I wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not in front of him. He was trying to gaslight me, make me question my own perceptions. I was doing my job, sir. I reported what I saw. If you had acted sooner, if you had trusted my assessment instead of doubting me, maybe this wouldn't have happened. It was always their fault, not mine. They were always moving the goalposts, changing expectations without communicating them. He stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. You lied. Specialist. You exaggerated to force our hand. You put lives at risk? I interpreted the data. Lieutenant, I made a judgment call based on what I saw. You want us to be proactive, right? To anticipate threats? That's what I did. My voice was rising, a little shaky. This was such an invalidating feelings moment. You're being dramatic. It's not that serious. That's what he was basically saying. He shook his head, looking utterly defeated. You're off watch. Report to the CO's office in the morning. I didn't care. I didn't care what he thought. He was just another one of those guys who wanted to keep me in my comfort zone, who discouraged my growth, my ability to take initiative, because it didn't include him. The next morning, it was a nightmare. The CO, Colonel Evans, was a scary dude. He was like the burnt-out type, just tired of everyone's nonsense. He didn't yell, which was worse. He just looked at me with this dead stare. Specialist Riley, explain yourself? I gave him the same line. Sir, I observed suspicious movement. My assessment was that it posed a threat to the convoy and our personnel. I communicated my findings clearly. He leaned forward, his voice low. Your findings, Specialist, directly led to 2 civilian fatalities and several wounded, including children. Your thermal logs show no definitive armed individuals. At best, an indistinct heat signature. You escalated the situation without justification. Sir, with all due respect, if I had simply reported indistinct movement, you would have dismissed it? You always dismiss me. I had to make it clear what the threat was. It was the truth. They never listened unless you screamed. It was a classic case of selective memory on their part. They remembered my mistakes, but forgot their own screw-ups that forced my hand. So, you admit you fabricated details. His voice was still calm, but it felt colder than the air conditioning. I embellished for clarity. Sir, to ensure proper action was taken, in a combat zone. Clarity saves lives. I was sweating, but I held his gaze. I refused to let him see me break. I wasn't going to be some crying female. I was going to stand my ground. He just sighed. Specialist. Your actions directly contravene the rules of engagement and demonstrate a severe lack of judgment and accountability. Sir, I was accountable. I took responsibility for my analysis. It's everyone else who needs to be accountable for not trusting me. It was like a game of scorekeeping, where they were tallying my perceived failures, but ignoring their own failures in leadership. My battalion commander, Major Thompson, came in then. He was one of those passive-aggressive types, always with the subtle digs. He just stood there, arms crossed, not saying a word, but his silence was louder than any yelling. I could feel his judgment. He probably thought I was a liability. He probably thought I was trying to get attention. A few days later, it all blew up, not just in the CO's office, but everywhere. The families of the killed civilians were demanding answers. The news back home got hold of it. U.S. troops fire on civilian aid convoy. It was a mess. A total, unholy mess. And guess whose name was being whispered? Mean. They launched a full investigation. My squadron wasn't happy. The atmosphere around the phobie was toxic. Everyone was looking at me, not saying anything, but their eyes spoke volumes. Miller, the guy who was next to me, suddenly got chatty with other guys, telling his version of events. I heard snippets. She just said she saw it, but there was nothing there. She made it up. Traitors. All of them, they just couldn't handle the fact that a woman could be in charge, could make the tough calls. It was just jealousy wrapped as concern, always questioning my friendships while maintaining their own backroom gossip sessions. Then came the formal hearing. It was awful. They had all the logs, all the recordings, my own voice, clear as day, lying about armed individuals. I tried to explain it, to justify it, to make them understand that it was about getting them to act, that it was their stubbornness that was the real problem. But they didn't care. They just kept talking about negligence and reckless endangerment. They were painting me as a villain. It was totally unfair. They were trying to strip away my identity, everything I built around being a competent soldier. The ultimate humiliation, not the dishonorable discharge, though that sucked. Not even being blacklisted from all defense contractors, which totally messed up my financial plans. I'd always expected someone else to cover expenses while I kept my money separate. And now that was out the window. It was seeing my picture, my face, all over those military wife groups on Facebook. The woman who shot kids, Specialist Riley, disgracing our troops. It went viral. People I'd never met, people who didn't know the first thing about me, were calling me a monster. They were posting screenshots of my old social media, twisting everything I'd ever said, my whole public persona, everything I had meticulously crafted, supportive in front of friends, but critical when alone. It was all gone. My validation-seeking posts about relationship highlights, while ignoring real problems, were being mocked. It was a complete social collapse. My parents, who always supported me, suddenly got really quiet. My dad, who was always so proud of my service, barely looked at me when I went home. He didn't say anything, but I could feel his disappointment. It was worse than any shouting. My relationship with my boyfriend, Mark, completely fell apart. He was the too nice guy, over-accommodating, always avoiding conflict. He used to try to mediate, to see both sides. But after the news broke, he just became distant, emotionally disengaged. Hard to read. He couldn't handle the heat. He kept saying, Riley, maybe you should have just told them what you actually saw. Like he was a saint. Like he was perfect. He was trying to be Mr. Growth Mindset, setting boundaries, being all self-aware. But all I heard was him judging me, comparing me to others to make me feel inadequate. He ended up moving back to Houston, got involved with some genuinely loving woman, probably one of those good girls who never makes waves. And I'm stuck here, watching his perfect life unfold on Facebook. It's like a reversal of fortune. Everything I inflicted, coming back at me, amplified and inescapable. So here I am, dishonorably discharged, can't get a job that pays more than minimum wage. My name is Mud. I hear about the other guys from my unit still deploying, still doing their thing, getting promoted. I see pictures of LT Davis, smiling, getting a medal for courage under fire because he was the one who went in to secure the scene after my call. It's just laughable. They gotta play the heroes, and I gotta be the scapegoat. Do I regret what I did? No. I regret how it turned out. I regret that they didn't support me, that they underestimated me, that they made me look bad. If I was a man, they wouldn't care. They would have called me decisive, bold. But because I'm a woman, I'm unstable and reckless. It's just another example of their double standards. They demand transparency from me, but get defensive about their own whereabouts. They use tears or shut down to avoid addressing issues, but then criticize me for being emotional. It's all just hypocrisy. I don't care anymore. Not about them. Not about the military. Not about Mark. Not about anyone who isn't on my side. I was doing my best, and they just made it worse. It's not my fault. It's theirs. Always.